My name is Julian. I deal in absolutes. In my line of work, structural engineering, there is no maybe. A column either bears the load or it collapses. A beam is sound or it's condemned. There are no compromises, because compromise leads to failure, and failure leads to tragedy. 2 years ago, I discovered that the most beautiful, intricate structure I had ever worked on, my entire life with the woman I loved, was fundamentally and irrevocably unsound. It was a beautiful facade, built on a compromised foundation. And when I found the critical flaw, I didn't try to patch it up. I followed my professional mandate. I ordered a complete demolition. Our life was built around the Lighthouse Estate. It wasn't just a house, it was a cathedral of stone and glass perched on a treacherous, beautiful bluff overlooking the Pacific. A century-old monstrosity that had fallen into spectacular disrepair. My fiancée, Seraphina, an ambitious, stunning curator in the high-end art world, saw it as a legacy. I, a forensic architect and structural engineer who specialized in restoring condemned historic structures, saw it as my life's masterpiece. Seraphina was my opposite. I was meticulous, grounded, obsessed with the details hidden beneath the surface. She was ethereal, social, obsessed with the outward appearance. We balanced each other. She handled the gallery openings and the social connections. I handled the schematics and the load calculations. The estate was a joint venture, but the financial structure was intricate. It was held by a trust established by her wealthy, old money family, with the provision that Seraphina and I had to fully fund and execute the restoration. Our completed work was our equity. The wedding, scheduled in 3 months, was to be held in the estate's grand, newly restored ballroom. It was all connected. Everything was a testament to our future. My partner in the project was Marcus, the general contractor, a loyal, gruff man who had worked with me for a decade. He was the one who, months earlier, had installed a highly sophisticated wireless monitoring system in the house, a network of hidden cameras and environmental sensors, not for surveillance, but for safety. When you're tearing apart a century-old foundation and replacing support columns, you need real-time data on every beam and every vibration 24/7. That data fed directly to my secure laptop. The secondary villain was Elias Thorne, a charming, utterly ruthless real estate developer who Seraphina constantly courted for gallery investments. He was a snake, a handsome, tailored snake, and he always made my skin crawl. He'd show up to the site unannounced, always suggesting design changes to Seraphina that I knew would compromise the structural integrity. Seraphina announced she was taking a wellness retreat at the estate with 5 of her closest friends, a spiritual cleanse before the big day. I was scheduled to be in another city, supervising the dismantling of a massive warehouse, a perfect excuse for me to be absent. I was hesitant, but she insisted. "It's the last time I'll be single, Julian. Just a bit of harmless fun with the girls on the bluff." I kissed her goodbye, loaded my truck, and left the structural monitoring system running. I was 2 days into my warehouse job. It was 1 a.m. I had just finished reviewing the footage of a complicated demolition when an alert flashed on my screen. Structural abnormality detected, master bedroom wing, sudden increase in live load and vibration. I frowned. That wing had just been stabilized. I clicked into the live feed from the nearest discrete sensor, a high-definition camera embedded in what looked like a junction box, capturing a wide view of the new master suite. What I saw wasn't a structural failure. It was Seraphina's failure. The room was lit by neon mood lighting. Seraphina wasn't with 5 of her female friends. She was with Elias Thorne, the snake, and 2 other men I recognized as his business associates. There were 5 people total in the room, excluding Seraphina, and they were not performing a spiritual cleanse. I sat there not breathing for 5 full minutes. My brain didn't register emotion, it registered data. Timestamp, participants, location, duration. The monitoring system was doing its job perfectly, documenting every violation on my property. My professional detachment kicked in. This was a catastrophic failure in my personal structure. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply opened a new project file on my computer. I named it Operation Integrity Check. I downloaded and encrypted the full feed, along with all associated metadata, onto a secure, air-gapped server. I watched the rest of the retreat, 2 more days of laughing, planning the wedding, and Seraphina behaving like a future queen, with the occasional private rendezvous I now understood were not harmless. She had defiled the one thing I held sacred, the foundation of our life, built on the one place I poured my soul into. She used my masterpiece as a cheap motel for her betrayal. I returned to the city a day early. Seraphina was warm, glowing, and apologized profusely for not having a clean house for me. I smiled, kissed her, and told her it was the best vacation I'd ever had, the peace and quiet. The performance of my life had begun. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved through our shared life like a ghost, all while working 18-hour days, not on the renovation, but on Operation Integrity Check. First, I secured my financial structure. I closed our joint accounts, liquidated my investments, and transferred everything into a new trust, only accessible by a key phrase related to a forgotten Roman arch design, something only I would know. Second, I secured the evidence. I anonymously mailed a hard drive copy of the footage to a small, private legal firm specializing in forensic evidence, with instructions to release the data on a specific date contingent on my death or legal incapacitation. I wouldn't use the footage for revenge. I would use it for leverage. Then, I started looking for the hidden flaw in the Lighthouse Estate. The estate was the family trust's last major asset, and its success was paramount to Seraphina's inheritance. I knew that Seraphina and her father had been pushing the renovation timeline to make the property's value so high that no future legal challenge could touch it. They were rushing the foundation cure. They were pushing the weight limits. I spent days reanalyzing old geological surveys, which I had signed off on months ago. I cross-referenced the property's original colonial-era deed against the modern surveys. I went through years of municipal records, looking at every planning variance, every geological report, and every soil sample. I was looking for the crack in their perfect plan, the one structural detail that was legally and professionally damning. And then I found it. It wasn't a crack in the concrete. It was a fault line in the paperwork. Seraphina's grandfather bought the land in 1948, right after a massive cliff collapse just north of the property. The original survey, which had been filed and forgotten, showed a 15-foot encroachment from the official municipal easement. In layman's terms, the original century-old lighthouse foundation was built 15 feet onto public, unstable land. This wasn't illegal then, but modern coastal zoning laws, especially after recent climate change legislation, were absolute. If the truth came out, not only would the property have to be torn down to the 15-foot line, demolishing the entire western wing and the lighthouse turret itself, but the entire plot would be legally condemned as uninsurable and structurally vulnerable to erosion. The multi-million-dollar asset would become a multi-million-dollar liability. This was my weapon. The discovery was professional, undeniable, and it destroyed the foundation of her entire financial life, which was tied to this property. I had to ensure 2 things. I was the one to find the flaw, and the flaw was only revealed after the wedding, after all the final investment checks had cleared and Seraphina's reputation was fully aligned with the property's prestige. I updated my contractor, Marcus. I told him the geological survey was off, and to start secretly collecting highly technical soil samples from the boundary line, labeling them with code words like Project Chimera. I told him I needed this data for a new consulting contract, keeping him completely in the dark about Seraphina's betrayal. I needed a professional chain of custody. Then I focused on the wedding. I encouraged Seraphina to spare no expense. I signed off on the most expensive catering, the most extravagant flower arrangements, and the most exclusive guest list, all with a secret, uninsured liability clause in the fine print I added to the contracts. The date of the wedding was now the date of execution. The wedding day arrived. It was cinematic. Seraphina was breathtaking, wearing a custom gown that looked like it was spun from moonlight. The Lighthouse Estate, gleaming after 2 years of our blood, sweat, and millions of dollars, was the perfect backdrop. The A-list crowd, the art world elite, the old money donors, the developers, were all there. I played the role of the devoted groom perfectly. I looked at Seraphina's radiant, lying face and felt absolutely nothing. My heart was a sealed vault.
The reception was held in the grand ballroom, a room that, according to my recent final structural calculations, was bearing a live load far in excess of its legally flawed maximum, and sat just feet from the encroaching, unstable municipal easement. As we exchanged vows, I slipped a single inconspicuous document into the hand of my witness, Marcus. It wasn't my vows, it was a final notice of condemnation. During the champagne toast, Seraphina's father, Mr. Hawthorne, rose to give the final toast, praising the couple, the legacy, and the triumphant completion of their multi-million-dollar estate. As he finished, I rose, calmly taking the microphone. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. It is a beautiful structure, isn't it?" I paused, looking around the opulent room. But as many of you know, my profession requires me to seek structural integrity above all else. And today, I must confess, I found a flaw in the very foundation of everything we have built. Seraphina smiled, thinking this was a metaphor. "My darling, you're talking shop. Don't bore the guests." I ignored her. "I have just filed an immediate, irrevocable injunction with the Municipal Planning Commission, the State Insurance Board, and the Hawthorne Trust Legal Office." Gasps rippled through the room. Based on my forensic reanalysis of the original 1948 survey and recent coastal stability data, I have professionally concluded, under penalty of perjury, that the Lighthouse Estate is structurally compromised, uninsurable, and sits 15 feet inside a municipal easement for unstable coastal land. I held up a copy of the official filing. The estate is hereby condemned and requires immediate partial demolition to the boundary line. The ballroom erupted. Seraphina's smile vanished, replaced by pure terror. Her father rushed toward me, yelling, "It's fake! Julian, what is the meaning of this?" "It's professional due diligence, father-in-law. You rushed the surveys. I found the flaw, and unfortunately, due to the total demolition required of the western wing, the wing where the current master suite is located, the property's value is now 0. In fact, it's a liability. The Hawthorne Trust is now entirely insolvent." As this financial bomb was detonating, the social bomb followed. A waiter, secretly an operative hired by my lawyer, passed out USB drives, or cards with a QR code, to the most influential guests, specifically the reporters and developers. The drives were labeled "The Lighthouse Estate, Hidden Structural Stressors." The first person to look at the drive was a ruthless society blogger. Her jaw dropped. "Julian, what did you do? What did you give them?" "That," I said, gently pulling my arm away, "is the live load data from the Master Suite monitoring system from 2 weeks ago. I also gave them all the contact information for Elias Thorne and his associates. They should be able to cross-reference the increased live load and vibration against the visual evidence of your wellness retreat. You see, I not only condemned the house, Seraphina, I proved it was actively defiled on public property." The blogger's flashbulb went off. Seraphina's world, her reputation, her inheritance, her entire social structure collapsed instantly, right there in the ballroom she had meticulously planned to use for her coronation. I left the estate immediately, driven away by Marcus. The next morning, the papers didn't report a wedding, they reported a catastrophic structural failure and an accompanying sexual scandal. Seraphina's father tried to sue me, claiming I manufactured the flaw. But my professional documentation, the original 1948 deed, the dated soil samples, the signed, legally certified letters from the municipal zoning board were irrefutable. I was the hero who saved the city from a potential coastal disaster and saved the Hawthorne Trust from a massive, multi-million-dollar insurance fraud claim. Seraphina's life evaporated. Her gallery job, dependent on high society image, fired her immediately. Her social circle treated her like a leper. The family trust's assets were seized to cover the immediate cost of stabilizing the cliff face, leaving them with nothing. We had one final encounter, 6 months later, in a sterile lawyer's office to dissolve the few joint assets we had. She looked broken, wearing clothes that belonged to someone else. "Why?" she whispered, her voice raw. "Why didn't you just leave me? Why didn't you just scream and walk away? I ruined our wedding, not our life." I looked at her, my voice low and professional. "You misunderstand me, Seraphina. I didn't ruin our life. You did. And you did it on the property, in the structure I poured my professional integrity into. You think I did this for revenge? No, revenge is emotional. This was structural integrity." I leaned forward. "A betrayal like that is a critical structural flaw. You violated the fundamental load-bearing requirement of our relationship, trust. A good engineer doesn't patch over a critical flaw. They document it, they condemn the entire structure, and they demolish it safely and professionally, ensuring it never harms anyone else." I slid a final document across the table. It was a consulting invoice. Because I found the structural flaw that saved the city from a major legal disaster and the trust from a massive insurance fraud claim, and because I professionally documented the failure that caused the condemnation, I was awarded a $2 million consulting fee by the municipal council. I stood up. "You tried to use our home for your cheap, hidden desires. I used my knowledge to make that home and the life you built on it condemned property." I walked out and never looked back. Today, I don't build beautiful facades for others. I use my consulting fee to fund my own projects, restoring structures that are honest about their flaws and building new ones on solid ground. The Lighthouse Estate still stands, but the master suite wing is gone, demolished down to the municipal boundary line. It's an empty shell now. A constant reminder to Seraphina that when you choose to build a life on lies, a true professional will always come back to enforce the final, irrevocable law of engineering. Integrity wins.